Hi Reddit, I'm 29F and this is the weirdest, most confusing thing that's ever happened to me. I honestly don't even know how to begin wrapping my head around it, so I figured I'd write it all out and see what people think. I'm engaged to this guy, Eric, 31M. We've been together almost 5 years. For most of that time, things have been pretty solid. He's sweet, dependable, and maybe a little too close with his family, but I figured it was just part of who he is. His younger sister, Lindsay, 27F, has always been intense. The kind of person who's always trying to one-up you but with a smile on her face. You know the type. She and I never really clicked. I was civil, always polite, but we weren't exactly sharing wine nights or doing sisterly brunches. Honestly, she gave me the creeps sometimes. Something about the way she talked to Eric just rubbed me the wrong way, too intimate, too possessive. She once told me she was the only woman who truly understands him. That should have been a red flag, right? Anyway, Eric and I have been talking about buying a house. He'd been saving since before we met, and I've contributed my fair share too. We agreed it would be a joint decision, a fresh start. Something for us, not his family. I was excited. I even started a Pinterest board. Then last month, he started acting a little weird. Not obvious weird, just distant. Like he was always somewhere else mentally. Kept saying he was busy with numbers and paperwork. I figured it was work. He's a financial analyst and sometimes he brings his stress home, but this time felt different. More secretive. Then came the first surprise. One afternoon, a strange letter came in the mail. It was addressed to me, which was odd, because most of our bills and statements are digital. I wasn't expecting anything. So I opened it. It was a property deed. At first, I thought it was a mistake. My name, right there in bold ink, listed as the sole owner of a house I'd never seen before. I almost laughed. But then I saw the address and the cosigner. Eric. And Lindsay. My heart dropped into my stomach. I must have read that letter 10 times before I even moved. There it was, clear as day, my full legal name, listed as the owner of a house I'd never even heard of. And right under mine, in the cosigner section, were the names Eric M., last name, and Lindsay A., last name. I felt like I was in some kind of prank video. Like, was this some bizarre joke? Had Eric done something romantic and insane, like bought us a surprise house and just forgot to tell me? But then why would Lindsay be on it? I didn't want to jump to conclusions. So I waited until that night, when Eric got home from the gym. I had the letter tucked under a magazine on the coffee table. I tried to act normal. I didn't want to come at him guns blazing if there was some innocent explanation. But as soon as I brought it up, his whole face changed. He didn't even try to hide it. His jaw locked up. He didn't say, "What deed?" or "That must be a mistake." He just kind of froze, like a computer that crashed mid-update. Then he sighed, this long, tired kind of sigh, and said, "I was going to tell you. I swear, that sentence will haunt me forever. I was going to tell you." Like I had just stumbled onto some old grocery receipt, not a legally binding document for a home I didn't know existed. I sat there in silence, just staring at him. Waiting. And then, as calmly as if he were explaining a weekend getaway, he told me the house was something he and Lindsay had been working on for a while now. Something they invested in together, but it made sense to put in my name. Excuse me? He said it would be a family property. Something we could all use. For vacations. For the future. He actually said that. The future. Our future, with his sister? I asked him why he didn't mention it before. Why they'd been signing papers and moving money around behind my back. Why they used my name without telling me. His response? It was a surprise. I felt my stomach twist. Then he added something that chilled me. It's better this way. You have good credit. The house is safer with your name on it. I wanted to scream. I still don't know what that means exactly. Safer? I asked if we were going to live there. He said no. Lindsay was moving in. That's when I finally lost it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My fiancé and his sister bought a house together, put it in my name, and were letting her live there, full-time. No rent. No discussion. Nothing. And it got even weirder from there. I barely slept that night. Eric acted like the whole thing was some mild misunderstanding. Like I should have been flattered that he trusted me enough to put the house in my name. As if that made this whole thing less creepy. I spent the night on the couch. I needed space to think. I kept running everything through my head over and over. How long had this been going on? How much money had he used? Why was his sister moving in? And most importantly, why the hell was I the legal owner of a property I never approved? The next morning, I left the house before he woke up and drove to the address on the deed. I wish I hadn't. The place was perfect. A newly renovated bungalow on a quiet street, white stone exterior, a wraparound porch, and a little garden already blooming out front. It looked straight out of a real estate magazine. Like someone had poured their soul into making it cozy. There was a silver SUV in the driveway. Lindsay's. I parked across the street and just sat there, staring at the house I apparently owned while Eric's sister waltzed around like it was hers. And then it happened. She walked out onto the porch, barefoot, holding a mug. And she looked so comfortable. Like she belonged there. Like she'd been there for weeks already. I watched her walk to the mailbox, open it, flip through the letters, and then pause. She pulled out an envelope, turned it over, and smirked. Even from across the street, I could see it was addressed to me. She held it up to the light like she was reading through it, then tucked it under her arm and walked back inside. I felt sick. There was mail going there. In my name. To a house I didn't even know existed 2 days ago. I drove straight to the county office. I needed answers, real ones. I told them I was listed as the deed holder and wanted a copy of everything on file. And what they gave me. That's when it all really started to unravel. At the county office, I expected to get a standard printout, something boring and bureaucratic, just confirming my name was on the deed. What I got was a folder. A thick one. Inside were multiple documents. The purchase agreement. Loan paperwork. Transfer filings. Insurance forms. All of them had one thing in common, my signature. Except, I never signed any of it. My hands went numb flipping through the pages. It was my name. My handwriting. Even my initials scrawled in the margins. But I never picked up a pen. I never sat at a desk with a notary. I never signed any damn documents for a house I didn't know existed. That's when the woman helping me gave me a weird look and asked, "You didn't do this electronically?" I told her no. She paused, then told me it had been filed via DocuSign. She pulled up the confirmation log. My email. My phone number. My IP address. Except, I never got anything. I never clicked anything. I never approved anything. That's when it hit me like a punch to the gut. Eric had access to my devices. He knew all my passwords. We shared a computer. Sometimes when I was tired, I'd even ask him to check my emails for me. I trusted him like an idiot. I realized what he must have done, used my login, signed for me, and made it all look clean. It probably never even crossed his mind that I'd question it. Why would I? He made sure I never saw a single message from the lender or the county office. He handled all the mail. My name was forged. I sat in that chair, stunned, while the clerk kept talking about how unusual it was for someone not to know about a property in their name. I could barely breathe. This wasn't just a lie. This was fraud. When I got home, Eric was in the kitchen, acting like everything was fine. Like we hadn't just detonated our relationship the night before. He smiled and asked if I wanted breakfast. I asked him if he forged my signature. He blinked, then said something I'll never forget. "It's not forgery if we're getting married." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just turned around, grabbed my purse, and left. Because the worst part wasn't just that he'd forged legal documents. It was that he said it so casually, like he really believed that marrying me gave him the right to do whatever he wanted with my name. And I hadn't even seen the biggest red flag yet. After that comment, "It's not forgery if we're getting married," I knew I couldn't just let it go. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was calculated. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I had no idea who I'd actually been sharing my life with for the past 5 years. I drove straight to my best friend's apartment and broke down the second she opened the door. She'd always had her doubts about Eric. She thought he was too controlling, too close to Lindsay, but even she didn't expect this. We talked for hours. I showed her the deed, the fake signatures, everything. She was furious. Not just for me, but because she pointed out something I hadn't even considered. If the house was in my name, I was liable. For taxes. For any issues. For anything that went wrong. And then she asked the question I hadn't been brave enough to think about yet. What if they're hiding something in that house? Something about the way she said it gave me chills. I hadn't even been inside. I didn't know if Lindsay had roommates, or if they were planning something shady, or worse, if they were hiding assets or debts under my identity. So the next morning, I went back. This time, I knocked. Lindsay answered in a silk robe, sipping orange juice like it was noon on a Sunday and not 8 a.m. on a weekday. She looked surprised to see me but didn't even pretend to be polite. She said Eric told her I might be confused and that she didn't want drama. I told her I needed to come inside. That I was the legal owner of the house and had a right to inspect it. That's when her face changed. Not angry. Not scared. Just blank. Like a wall went up. She said, "I don't think that's a good idea." I repeated myself, firmer this time. She didn't budge. Then she dropped the bomb. She said the house wasn't just for her. She was pregnant. And Eric was helping her out until things were sorted. I stood there on the porch, stunned. Because Lindsay had just said she was pregnant. And Eric was helping her. I don't know how long I stood there after she said it, "I'm pregnant." It wasn't just the words. It was the way she said them. Calm, cold. Like it was a power move. Like she wanted to watch my reaction. Like she knew it would destroy me. And it almost did. I couldn't even get a full sentence out. I asked her who the father was, barely able to breathe. She just gave me this sly little smirk and said, "It's complicated." That's when I knew. She wanted me to think it was Eric. And if I'm being honest, for a second, I did. Everything started spinning. The secrecy. The fake signatures. The house under my name. And now this? She didn't let me inside. Just told me, again, that it wasn't a good time and closed the door right in my face. I sat in my car shaking. I don't remember driving home. All I know is I burst into our apartment, ready to confront Eric with every ounce of fury I had left. But the second he saw me, he knew. I didn't even have to say it. He just sat down on the edge of the bed and put his head in his hands like a man defeated. And that's when he told me the truth. Or at least, his version of it. No, Lindsay wasn't pregnant with his baby. She was pregnant by her ex, some guy named Kyle who, according to Eric, was unstable and refused to be involved. Eric said she had nowhere to go and was scared. So he stepped in to protect her. Said the house was meant to give her a safe place to raise the baby. I asked him if he slept with her. He didn't say no right away. Instead, he went quiet for a long time. Then finally muttered, "Not in the way you're thinking." What the hell does that even mean? He claimed it was emotional, not physical. That he got caught up trying to fix her life. That he wanted to tell me but was afraid I wouldn't understand. He was right about one thing, I didn't. Not because I didn't want to understand. But because none of it made sense. Why forge my name on legal documents? Why put my future at risk to protect a woman who always treated me like competition? Why let me find out from her that she was pregnant? And most of all, why was he still defending her? He begged me not to tell anyone. Said it was complicated family stuff and he was trying to do the right thing. But I wasn't hearing any of it. Because something still didn't add up. There was one part of the house paperwork that hadn't made sense when I looked through the files. A financial transfer. From my savings account. To a private escrow company. And I never made that transaction. That financial transfer, it kept scratching at my brain like an itch I couldn't reach. $47,000. Gone from my savings account. Disguised under some vague transaction name I didn't recognize at first glance. But now that I was looking closely, it matched the escrow company listed on the house paperwork. I'd been saving that money for years. It was my emergency fund, tucked away since before I even met Eric. And somehow, without me logging in, without me authorizing anything, it was used. I sat there in my car outside the bank, pulse pounding. My name, my account, my money. Stolen. I took a deep breath, walked inside, and asked to speak to the manager. I didn't even bother with small talk. I explained that there had been a transaction I didn't authorize. I had ID, statements, everything ready. The manager was polite, pulled up the transaction history. Asked if I had perhaps forgotten making a large transfer through my joint device. No, I hadn't forgotten. Then she showed me the kicker. The authorization came through my online banking login, on a weekday morning, from an IP address located at our apartment. The exact moment? I was at work. In meetings. Eric was home. I felt the heat rise to my face. I wasn't even surprised anymore. I was just empty. Numb. The bank said because it came through my credentials, it wasn't technically considered fraud. I could dispute it, but there was no guarantee I'd get the money back. I left the bank shaking. Furious. Not just at him, but at myself. For trusting him with my passwords. For letting him help with our finances. For ever believing he was protecting me when, the whole time, he was using me. When I got home, I didn't say a word to Eric. I packed a bag. I was done talking. Done listening. But just as I was walking out the door, something caught my eye. His laptop. Open. Email still up. And right there in plain sight, a thread with the subject line, Lindsay's prenatal investment plan. I froze. It wasn't just some safe house. This was a business plan. One where Eric and Lindsay were planning to flip the house after the baby came, turn it into a maternal wellness retreat. A startup idea. Using my credit, my name, and my stolen money to build it. There were drafts. Budgets. A launch timeline. And then, at the bottom of the thread, an email from Lindsay, just 4 days earlier. Once the baby is born, and she's out of the picture, we can move forward without any more obstacles. That's when it clicked. They weren't just keeping secrets. They were planning a life that didn't include me. I don't remember zipping up my bag. I don't remember locking the door. I just remember sitting in my car, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the dashboard, and wondering what the hell just happened to my life. A week ago, I thought I was planning a wedding. Now I was unraveling a scam, with me as the mark. I reread that email a dozen times. Once the baby is born, and she's out of the picture. I wasn't even a person to them. I was a legal loophole. A financial tool. A stepping stone. I drove straight to my cousin's place, who happens to be a real estate lawyer. I'd never really needed her services before, just traded Christmas gifts and awkward hugs at family reunions. But that night, I showed up on her doorstep shaking with rage and ready to burn it all down. And once I explained, she was furious for me. She confirmed it, forging my digital signature, stealing funds, registering a property in my name without informed consent, all illegal. And the best part? Because my name was on the deed, I had legal authority over the property. If I wanted to lock Lindsay out, I could. If I wanted to sell it out from under them? Also doable. But instead, we came up with something better. Something poetic. First, I filed a fraud complaint with my bank. Then we submitted a cease and desist notice for misuse of funds and identity theft. My cousin helped me draft a revocation of occupancy, basically a legal demand that Lindsay vacate the property. It would be delivered by courier, signed, dated, legally binding. But I didn't stop there. I changed every password I ever shared with Eric, froze my credit, notified the escrow company that all future transfers related to that house required in-person approval from me only. And then came the fun part. I posted a listing. For sale. With my name as the legal owner and a short, very real description. Beautiful bungalow, perfect for a quiet family, or for those ready to build something new after betrayal. By the time Eric got home that night, he was already getting calls from mutual friends. His phone lit up with missed calls, texts, and emails all asking the same thing. Dude, why is your fiancé selling your sister's house? He came bursting through the apartment door like a storm, but I was already gone. And I'd left something waiting for him. A printed copy of Lindsay's email. Highlighted. With one line underlined in red. We can move forward without any more obstacles. I guess they should have picked a different obstacle. Because now? I was the wall they couldn't climb. I thought they'd go into damage control mode. I thought Eric would call, beg, cry, maybe even try to spin the story. I expected Lindsay to block me, disappear into whatever hole she crawled out of. I even braced myself for threats. But what I didn't expect was for them to double down. Less than 24 hours after I listed the house for sale, Lindsay posted a video on social media. She stood on the front porch, cradling her stomach, with soft piano music playing in the background. The caption? Starting over in our new home, 2 hearts. Some people tried to tear us down, but family always wins. I couldn't believe it. She acted like the house was a gift, like she earned it, like she was some poor, radiant single mother who'd triumphed over cruelty. And the worst part? The comments were full of support. People I didn't even know calling her so strong and such an inspiration. And there, right in the mix, was Eric, liking every post, dropping red heart emojis, tagging her with stupid inside jokes like Team Us. It was like I never existed. But they'd made one fatal mistake. They forgot the part where I still owned everything. The next morning, my cousin served Lindsay the formal eviction papers right to her doorstep. I made sure she couldn't pretend not to see it. And just to be extra clear, I emailed Eric the notice too, CCNG the county clerk's office. Within the hour, my phone exploded. Eric called non-stop. Left voicemails that started polite and quickly spiraled into desperate. He begged me to slow down, think it through, and not ruin everything we built. He actually said, this doesn't have to be a war. But it already was. He just didn't realize I'd already won. Then came Lindsay's message. One single sentence, sent at 2:17 a.m., no punctuation, just rage. You'll regret this when you realize he was never yours. I didn't even reply. Because by that point, the inspector I'd hired had already done a walkthrough of the house. And what he found? Let's just say it was the final nail in their carefully curated fantasy. When the inspector emailed his full report, I sat in silence staring at my screen for a full minute. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so on brand for Eric and Lindsay to take something already insane and somehow make it worse. See, I hadn't just hired the inspector to appraise the house for resale. I wanted to know what condition it was actually in. If they'd messed anything up. If they'd done shady construction. if anything illegal was going on. What I got was a list of violations. Illegal plumbing in the basement. Mold under the bathroom tile. Electrical rewiring done without a permit. An entire garage that had been converted into an herbal wellness suite, complete with heat lamps, grow trays, and nutrient tanks. Except there were no herbs. It was a weed grow. They'd been cultivating cannabis in a residential zone, without a license, under my name. The utility bills made it obvious: sky-high electricity usage, suspicious water consumption. And since the house was legally mine, I would have been the one arrested if it was raided. That was it. I was done playing fair. I filed a police report. I submitted the inspector's findings to the zoning board and contacted a real estate attorney to begin immediate proceedings to evict Lindsay on the grounds of illegal activity and fraud. Within 72 hours, the sheriff's department delivered a notice to vacate, effective immediately. They had 48 hours to get out. Eric tried one last time. He showed up outside my cousin's office, sweaty, panicked, practically shaking. He said he'd made a mistake. That Lindsay had pressured him. That he didn't know about the grow setup. That he'd only gone along with the plan because he was afraid to lose everything. I didn't even get out of the car. I rolled down the window and said, "You already did." Then I rolled it back up and drove away. By the end of the week, the house was empty. Lindsay left behind a half-broken vanity, a pile of burned incense, and one final parting gift, a note scribbled in eyeliner on the bathroom mirror that read, "Enjoy the silence." I repainted the walls that weekend. Sold the house 2 months later, for a clean profit, after repairs. And now? Now I live in a smaller apartment. No drama. No lies. No shared devices. And definitely no uninvited sisters with secret pregnancies and grow lights in the garage. Sometimes I still get messages from random people who saw Lindsay's video and think I'm the villain in her story. And I let them. Because if being the villain means I kept my freedom, my future, and my name, then yeah, I'll be the villain. Gladly. Thanks for reading, Reddit. I think I'm finally free.